Letters to the editor are a way for you to start to get attention. Mention the fact that you're a candidate. I disagree with this. We don't write enough letters to the editor. And that's free media. They may not always publish it, but if you're a candidate, they also might. Gives you an edge. Do interviews always, even with small papers. Make a list of papers in your district, and some of them will use the stories that you write. So if you basically write a story for them as a press release, the reporter might call and do a couple desultory questions, but I've had quite a number of them just appear. They use it. They're really short-staffed. It's surprising how cheap ads are in a lot of the smaller papers. So think about big returns for your dollars. So an ad is an ad, that's fine, you've paid for it, but you also can leverage that into some earned media. So it's way easier than you think. It does take a little effort. But remember, from a voter's perspective, if you haven't done that, it means you haven't even done that. The world is about costly signals. Producers are busy and lazy, the big two. And they have hours and hours to fill. Have someone else contact radio personalities. I just, 2 weeks ago, last week, sent an email. I've been on Brad and Brett's show a number of times. And I said, you know, y'all should interview Mike Pfeiffer, and gave him some details and a contact address. And bang, right away.
They must have called me the next day.
And it wasn't because of me. It's because of that. That's all you need to know. A lot of times they need somebody for today. It's much more interesting to have someone, and you have some sort of credential, you have some sort of reason. This isn't Joe. This is libertarian candidate for something. Let's put them on. I mean, maybe they'll be interesting, maybe they won't. And if you are interesting, they'll probably use you again. Alan Handelman had me on a bunch of times, one time for 2 hours. 2 hours on the Alan Handelman show. What is that worth? A lot. Didn't have to pay for it. In fact, he was glad we were providing him with a service by having someone who was interested. So we tend to think of, we hate the media. And that comes across in sometimes our answers to questions or the sort of confrontational attitude. The media is your friend. Earned media is the way that you can make a huge difference with small amounts of money but a fair amount of effort cultivating producers. Did you have something to say, Mike?
No, just thank you.
Well, no, so be persistent, and there's something just like letters to the editor in radio, and that's called calling. Call them. If it's a call-in show, call in. That's a letter to the editor for a radio show. I'm so-and-so candidate, I wanted to talk about this. They'll identify you as a candidate.
In Southern California, we had some guys that regularly called, and the host of the show liked them so much, they would bump them up too. Like if you call
you'll
you're
come
seventh
first,
on
yeah.
the list, they'll bring you on.
Well, a fair amount of the time, if I'm driving or something and Bill LeMay has pissed me off, I'll call, and yeah, they'll bump me right up. So it doesn't take long. They know, they have 20 or so callers, and they're sick of them. And then they have some other people, they don't know about them. So somebody who's different, who says, here's the reason I'm calling, here's what I'm going to say, that's great. They need that. You are doing them a favor.
Thoughtful controversy.
So that analogy is one you should keep in mind. Radio call-ins are like letters to the editor. They'll probably put it on. And other callers are likely to be interested. Now, it's true that you aren't being paid. So I think a lot of the time people think, I really wanted all this effort and I'm not getting paid anything. Think in terms of the implicit transaction. You are securing an asset that's extremely valuable to your campaign without spending money for it. Your point is not to maximize the amount of money you spend. Your point is to maximize your impact. And earned media is a way we can have a big impact. Well, websites, and a number of you know more about this than I do, but the basic things have some way for them to contribute. And it's really expensive to have some sort of merchant's account where they can contribute with credit cards. Whereas PayPal, most people trust and it's pretty easy. And some people will contribute. They just happen by and they will contribute. Make it very simple for them to do that. Have pictures and images there, interesting pictures and images. Spend a little money and get some professional pictures taken. The videos don't have to be, but having a professional image can make a big difference. Have something that changes, something that's updated once a week or more, even if it just rotates. And a new story or a new thing that's interesting where people might come back to the site. Events and appearances. You must be doing something in the next week. And issues. Make it easier for reporters or people who want to interview or introduce you to do your homework, to do their homework. Have a one-paragraph bio, not 1,000-word screed about everything that you've ever done to fight government. One bio talking about your accomplishments and your qualifications for office. Now, the other stuff may be there too, but have that 100-word bio that they can then easily use to introduce you on a radio appearance or somewhere else.
Yeah, this is what I said earlier about this is the online media kit. But also remember that just like you don't ever say anything you don't want to see in print or broadcast, don't put anything on your website or let anybody else put something on your website. Particularly important if you have Facebook pages. If you don't want to see printed. I have a Facebook page, and after I attended the American Majority Activist Workshop, I took off the ability for people to post on my wall because I don't want people posting on my wall and say I'm understand.
They're looking for reasons to make fun of us.
So be careful.
So I had a friend who was running a campaign. He's a good guy. His campaign manager was late at night. He was in a hurry. He was writing something about Second Amendment, and he said that the candidate favored the right to bear arms, B-A-R-E. That was what was in the paper. These are idiots. They want to protect this right to bear arms. What are they going to wear, sleeveless dresses?
Cut and paste. That's a lazy reporter. He cut and paste.
So then he had this little story. He has these preconceived images. He just waits and finds a mistake, and there it is. So if you haven't proofread it, don't put it up. Try to maintain control of it. It seems like it should be easy to be a treasurer, but there's a bunch of rules for the state and for the federal government, which, if you run afoul of them, we'll all be sorry. So go through the training yourself so that you can be a treasurer, or use a treasurer who has gone through the training. It isn't that hard. But before you can do fundraising, you have to have a way of processing the funds that you expect to receive. Don't say, I've done a lot of fundraising. Wow, that worked. Now what? How are we going to report it? That would be bad, to paraphrase Richard Nixon. Small amounts can matter. So the money grenade that we had in July of 2008 only raised $6,000, but it was part of a strategy. It had been announced by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte that if in some poll we were getting 5% in the end of July, we would be invited to the October 15th final debate with all three candidates, me being the third if we had 5%. So raised that $6,000 and immediately spent all of that and more on statewide radio, campaigning in July. Got to 5.2, 5.5% on public policy polling. Printed that out, sent it as overnight express to the head of the League of Women Voters. They wrote back and said, okay, you're in. And as a result, statewide television, October 15th, when people were actually watching, because it was the last debate, lead front page stories on papers all over the state for having raised $6,000. And you can take a zero off that for local races. A small amount can make a pretty big difference. And the fact that you're seen in that setting means that the voters say, that's a real candidate. Well, thank you very much.